Well, hello. This is the day we said goodbye. A meditation on acceptance. Of acceptance. I'm reading chapter 8 today. I hope you stick around and enjoy. And I'm gonna have a little of my coffee right now. I wasn't lying. So, this chapter is a little bit longer than the last one. The last one was 2 whole pages. Woohoo! This chapter 8 takes place on September 23rd, 2005. It takes place the night before my wedding. And the name of the chapter is Rosa Pays a Visit. This is not an easy chapter for me to read. I told myself I was going to read through halfway through this book, give you the first half, let you buy the other half. Clearly, we're not halfway through the book. I mean, yeah. I just want you to know this is, I'll give you more later. I'm just going to start. In the middle of the afternoon, one day before my wedding, Sean dropped me off at Tim's motel. Tim and Axel had checked into a chain motel in Garden Grove for the weekend. They would stay there for the wedding, and I would stay there until after I was wed. You sure you don't want to come in? I asked Sean. I would, but I got to get back, he said sheepishly from behind the steering wheel. That little sound, if you heard it, that was cha-cha. My dogs are just over there. You have no idea how much self-control I'm showing you. I would, but I got to get back, he said sheepishly from behind the steering wheel. Clearly, he didn't like the current situation any more than I did. The current situation was that his wife, Megan, was starting the weekend in a bad way, and it wasn't clear if she'd make it to the wedding at all. They were both pretty exhausted after years of treatments and drugs and hope for her recovery from a terribly long battle with leukemia. And well, they were running out of everyone. But then Sean would stick by her side, and I told him that's exactly where he should be. I just don't want you to think that you're not, I ended vaguely. But he got it. I know, he said with some certainty. Are you guys going to be okay tonight? Oh, yeah, I said. We won't be drinking. Vicky wouldn't allow it. You mean you won't be drinking, Sean joked, but only just a little. Tim's issues with alcohol were pretty clear to everyone. No, I said, Tim has agreed. No booze. A side note on Tim. One of my best friends ever. Great guy. I love him with my heart and a lung, and I think part of my spleen. We went through a terrible time because of his alcoholism, and it kind of broke us apart a little bit. And then I thought we wouldn't be broken apart, and then I found out that he got married without even inviting me to his wedding. And that pretty much put the nail in the coffin. I think we have both, in our own ways, been trying to find our way back to our friendship. So we're not nearly as close as we once were. But I know that he watches these, and I want him to know that I love him. Some of my best memories are with Tim. And this night is one of my best memories with Tim. And not because, and we didn't even get ice cream. So I said, Tim has agreed, no booze. And Sean shook his head. God, it sounds miserable. I got out of his car with my backpack and Sean drove away. The motel looked like a dump. And we were in one of the shittier areas of Garden Grove. And if you don't know Garden Grove, California, most of it is a shitty area, which it took some doing to not be in. Anyway, I messed up that sentence. I'm just going to move on. I thought we may have to rethink our position on booze. Tim and Axel were watching a movie in their room when I came in. Tim greeted me with his usual bundle of energy explosively uncurling from his seat on the sofa. We've got a kitchen, and here's your tux, and we've got a pull-out bed, and we can go out for dinner, and Tim jumped around from one thing to another, giving me a tour of his room, and also of how well he'd handled himself as best man. I just want you to know, I'm going to take a little break for just a moment, because there's a dog right here. Right here. There's a dog right here. And she's so sweet. And she's so cute and I love her. And if I annoy her enough, she'll run away. So that was my plan. But you notice she's still sticking around. But I'll keep reading. I just had to get one. If you have a dog or a cat or anyone you love, you know there's times when you just have to grab them. So, thanks, Tim, I said. Oh, she left. Thanks, Tim. I said, you got any cigarettes? I'd promised Vicky not to smoke on the day of the wedding, at least not until after we kissed. But that day had not arrived yet. No, so Tim and I left the non-smoking room and walked out to the motel's gazebo in the parking lot, where I asked Tim repeatedly why Vicky would ever want a guy like me. You see, all of my nerves leading to that day, mostly focused on the day after, had led me to the conclusion that Vicky was getting the short end of the deal. She was marrying a lemon, and someone should have told her about that. Someone other than me. But Tim did his best. My dogs keep making noise over there. But Tim did his best to keep me calm and assuage my fears. Mostly, though, he distracted me the way he always did, with his disarming humor and heartfelt friendship. We smoked a few cigarettes, enjoyed some inside jokes, and laughed about everything. I felt as though I was in good hands and even began to relax a little. And then suddenly the sun was going down and we needed to get some dinner. Tim asked Axel if he wanted anything, but Axel told us not to worry, that he'd get something to eat. Just go out and have a good time and relax. I think Ken's going to explode. The way Axel said it made me sound like Don Knotts. When Tim and I left the motel, I asked him, do you have any ideas? I just thought we'd walk until we found something we liked, he told me. The two of us had a history of taking long walks all over the place. No matter where we were, no matter what time it was, no matter what crime-infested neighborhood we happened to be in. So it seemed fitting. All the same, this was a pretty rotten part of town. I'm not so sure, Tim, I said. I don't think there's anything around here. But that didn't matter. For several miles, we walked up Garden Grove Boulevard, past the porn store and past the hospital next to the porn store. It's a great city. Until we reached Harbor Boulevard. We were about to turn when I spotted the Dairy Queen. Ice cream? I asked. Ice cream for dinner? It is the night before the wedding. Tim gave me a critical look. I had been working very hard towards losing a few pounds before the wedding, which meant exercise and eliminating carbs, but most of this meant staying away from ice cream. Ice cream was my kryptonite, along with a lot of other things. So that night, I was like an ice cream junkie needing a fix. After dinner, Tim said, not for dinner. I gave an overly dramatic frown. Aww. We settled on a spot about a mile up the road, a little hole-in-the-wall Mexican food joint, about as unglamorous as you could get on a section of Harbor Boulevard that had once been predominantly known for its prostitutes. Whatever happened to them? I was sure Vicky was out at some swank Orange County 5-star with her girls while Tim and I were eating shitty takeout Mexican food. That sounded about right. And truth be told, it wasn't that bad. Sure, the restaurant charged us extra for just a few tortilla chips, and the salsa was watered down. We didn't even finish our food, it was so awful, but we got to share it together. So that made it worthwhile. As I mentioned, Tim was always closer to me than my own brothers, mostly because I liked Tim, and we had so much more in common. Especially at times like this, his friendship meant the world to me. And he let me get ice cream on the way back. When we returned to the motel, the sun was just going down. Jeff came to meet us, and we all sat out at the gazebo with Axel and talked about marriage and Vicky and what the future held. But I wasn't very much in the mood to contemplate the future. I kept repeating, okay, Vicky just got home. I kept repeating what a horrible mistake Vicky was making. She knows what she's in for, Jeff said. You think she hasn't already figured that out? But for some reason, she still wants you, so there's nothing you can do about it. And that seemed to be the final word. At around midnight, Jeff left, telling us he'd see us the next day in time for the wedding. As Jeff drove off, I went to Tim and Axel back at the room. I went with Tim and Axel back to the room. I can't read for shit. They had the bed back in their room, and I got the pull-out sofa in the front. With the sofa pulled out, the small living room was filled from one side to the other, blocking every exit, and I had to stay in bed as Tim turned out the lights for me. I put my head down and waited for sleep. And waited. Letting my mind wander, I found myself standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon. There was a breeze, and then it was wet. But not wet as if from the kind of storm that had met me at the canyon. It was the sad wetness of a funeral. And I heard someone speaking Russian. Then I was out on my patio, out on the patio of my old apartment, in the cold rain, smoking and sobbing. I'd just woken from one of my nightmares. It had been one of those nightmares where the sound of my own screams had woken me up. Then, just as quickly, I was back at the house Rosa and I had shared. And then I was awake. A rush of panic swept over me, and I knew I had to get out of that room. I jumped up in my bed, in the pitch blackness of the motel room. Damn those thick curtains. I tried to roll out of the bed, but the bed took up most of the small room, and that was why Tim had to turn off the lights. I tried again, this time vaulting over the back of the couch, and made my way to the light switch to turn on the lights. Brightness filled the room, and the illumination helped me realize just where I was. It helped pull me out of that last place of my nightmares, and I saw that the hour was just past 3 a.m. My tux hung on the back of the closed bathroom door, and it served to remind me what the panic had all been about. I'd gone to bed dressed, so leaving the room was just a matter of putting on my shoes and grabbing the smokes. After all, I knew I wouldn't be sleeping anytime soon. So I made my way back out to the gazebo, sat down, and lit up. Something was troubling me, and it was more than just the wedding. I could feel something coming, and I sat there and waited patiently, knowing it would come. Vicky has entered the house. Now let's see if we can get her to talk. I can't get her to get on the screen, but can you say hi?
Hello.
See, she has a lovely voice. Not that you can tell from one word. So let's go back to the book, shall we? And then, as if on cue, there she was, but not that one. Not Vicky. I hadn't been expecting her to be wearing her wedding dress, but then I also hadn't been expecting her to be 21 again either. I shouldn't have been expecting her at all. And it was the combination of this realization with her presence that made me realize just how crazy this all was. The person approaching me in her wedding dress and her 21-year-old body was Rosa. She wasn't there, of course. I was hallucinating again. I said, "Great. You have to look like that?" So, before I move on, there's a couple pages left of this chapter. Before I move on, I want to tell you that schizophrenia is not a joke. Hallucinating is not a joke. This is not in this book because it's a joke. It's not in this book because it's funny. There's a physical component to hallucinating that even if you don't feel it at the moment, it's there. It's miserable, it's horrible, it's dark, it's disturbing. So I did not put this moment in the book lightly. I had no urge to write my ex-wife into my book about my second wife. But I didn't really have a choice because you'll see. Rosa was positively radiant. And it wasn't just that ghost-like shimmer her hallucinated body gave off. I'd always found her achingly beautiful. And seeing her there, nearly 2 decades younger than myself, I don't know if she had ever looked more beautiful. You see, after I'd lost Rosa, my heart had been so broken that I didn't know what to do. I tried self-destruction, and attempted suicide was only a part of that. I went through drugs and women and booze and self-pity and everything I could think of just to ease the pain. But the pain would not be eased quite so easily. It wasn't just depression or desperation, this need I had for Rosa that led me to try killing myself. It was insomnia, sleepwalking, nightmares, sleepwalking in the middle of nightmares, insomnia brought on by nightmares. Day after day, week after week. I had lived in the hell of my own despair for so long that my mind had snapped. I really think it broken away. And so after our split in May of 2000, when I had moved into my own apartment, that just became the way things were. Sleeping nightmares sometimes turned into waking nightmares, and I found myself sleepwalking outside of my home, outside of the protection of my 4 walls. I'm like way over here. Outside the protection of my 4 walls. Heck, I once awoke to find myself driving on the 91 freeway. That had become the new normal. When Vicky and I got together, I just had to explain it to her and hope for the best. Can you imagine reading a laundry list like that to a woman you wanted to marry? Vicky's acceptance was nothing short of miraculous. Oh, sure, she worried that I wouldn't sleep for days, and she comforted me when I awoke from nightmares. She would awake to find me diffusing an imaginary bomb in my sleep or pacing the room looking for secret plans. This makes sense when you realize that sleepwalking is nothing more than walking around in a dream state. And I had some interesting dreams. Shapoopy, hi. I'm going to grab you and put you on I'm going to get Shapoopy here in a minute. Vicky's response to my sleepwalking and my nightmares was so perfect, it made me love her even more. When she caught me in my crazy state, she would just tell me she had already defused the bomb or found the plans and that it was perfectly safe for me to return to bed. Things didn't get better, though, despite her acceptance. I was forced to continue living within a nightmare left by Rosa. And no matter how normally I tried to live my life, my mind refused to accept it. Finally, sometime before our wedding, Vicky convinced me to seek professional help. I'd tried a therapist before, one whose mannerisms were so dour I called him Dr. Doom. Vicky convinced me they couldn't all be bad, and I agreed to try again. This time I saw a psychiatrist who sent me to a therapist who spent half a dozen sessions discussing my issues until the psychiatrist used the therapist's notes to give me a diagnosis. Hallucinosis, he said. Halluci what? I asked. The psychiatrist explained my problem thusly. I experienced nightmares and sleepwalking and waking nightmares and hallucinations and panic attacks and many other kinds of disturbances, but, he explained, I knew they weren't real. I always observed my problems with an objective eye, keeping in mind that these were tricks my mind was playing on me. This meant they were not technically hallucinations, wherein the sufferer is convinced they are real, but hallucinosis. Just a little note, I found out after that, as one does, that hallucinosis is not a thing. Sometimes people make shit up. You are hallucinating, but you know you're hallucinating, he explained. So it's not that much of a problem. That doesn't make it any better, I told him. No, but you can manage yourself, he said. Can you make it stop? I asked him, hoping we'd get to the point. He got to the point very easily. No, he replied, and that was that. By the night before my wedding, I'd been living with these problems for 3 years with no end in sight. And now, Rosa was paying me a visit. Oh, she was beautiful. Seeing her was actually quite thrilling. Who wouldn't want to revisit the love of their life in the bloom of her youth? But her immateriality, her lack of substance, the fact that I knew she wasn't really there, and that it was my own sick mind that had created her, stripped the event of any goodness or enjoyment. Rosa was haunting me. And I understood that I was making it happen. All the same, I knew it was time we had words. This wasn't her first visit, but I was determined to make it her last. You want a list? I asked her. A list of how I can marry anyone but you? How's this? She's prettier than you. She's nicer than you. She's decent and kind and loving, and she likes me. There's a few things you never tried. My voice rang off the gazebo on the side of the road, and I held my jaw angrily set against tears. But she was gone. Again. Well, she wasn't there, at least, even if her image was burned into my mind. I knew I couldn't go back to bed just yet. I sat on the gazebo and smoked. I hated myself for missing Rosa as much as I did, and held the bizarre wish that Vicky would understand and hate me too. Rosa's visit had only served to assure me that marrying Vicky could only end badly. And that's today's reading of The Day We Said Goodbye, A Meditation on Acceptance by me, Ken LaSalle, available in ebook, paperback, and audiobook. When I come back in a couple weeks, or maybe sooner, I will be reading Chapter 9, Wedding Guests. And yes, You already know about one of them. And that's it. Thanks for coming around, and I hope you subscribe, click the like button, and connect with me on all that social media business on the screen. I never put Shapoopy on the camera. Come here. Come here, Fluffy. Oh. And this little silly dog. This is Shapoopy, who you saw earlier. You saw her butt. This is her face.
Hello.